Hi, guys, and welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today, I have Lynda Sunshine West. Thank you so much for being here, Lynda. I'm so excited. Now, Lynda, is Sunshine your real name, or is that?
Yeah, great place to start, right? Just with
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it is not it's my real name now, but it
Okay.
wasn't my given name. It's interesting because in 2015, like we'll talk more about this a little bit later, but in
Yeah.
2015, I decided to break through one fear every single day for a year. And it was during that year, about maybe 3 months into it, that randomly people started calling me Sunshine.
Oh my
People who didn't
gosh.
even know each other.
Yeah.
And so I looked at that and I said, I must be sunshine. I don't believe it, but they see it in me. And so I'm going to adopt it. So maybe I'll believe it myself. And that's exactly what happened. Is the point on that is that we adopt other people's beliefs
Yeah.
in us, but
Yeah.
normally it's negative beliefs that we adopt.
Right.
And so when people say something something nice about us or complimentary, we kind
Mhm.
of poo poo it and
Yeah.
we say no, not me, that's not true, or what have you. And so this was kind of like my one of my exercises that I started doing is to see what others were seeing in me and
Mhm.
adopt it to be my truth instead of all the negativity, because my life was filled with negativity. So it is
Yeah.
not my given name, but it is my name that I
That
have
is your name.
adopted to be my name.
I
Yes.
love it. I love it. So yes, and I want to start from the beginning because I know your story and I like the story because of what you've overcome. So take us back to when you were 5 and you decided to run away from home, which is
Okay. Yeah.
tragic. I don't like it, but tell us about it.
Yes. It's funny because, like you say, it's tragic, which it was, of course. But I've told it so many times that I don't feel the tragedy anymore, which is
That's
good, right? Because
awesome. Yes.
that's part of healing, and that's like when people share their stories and they share them kind of like matter of factly, it's no big deal. It's not that it was never a big deal; it's that maybe they've actually healed through it, and that's where
Yeah,
I am today.
that's awesome.
So at 5 years old, I decided I didn't like where I was living. How many of us decide that? And then I ran away. Well, I was gone for an entire week. And it's interesting because as I started kind of like looking back at my life, I hired a life coach when I was 51,
Hmm.
and she's the one who helped me like come to all these realizations. But when I was working with her, I had this realization that at 5 years old, gone a week, nobody came to get me.
Yeah.
And so established at that time was this belief that they didn't come to get me because they don't love me and they don't want me around.
Right.
And so why didn't my mom come to get me? Why didn't my siblings?
Mhm.
I'm one of 5 kids. Why didn't anybody come to get me? Why did my dad come to get me? And so what I kind of surmised later, my mom was already passed away, so I couldn't ask her,
Oh, okay.
but I believe how it was like this. Okay. So I'm going to tell the story that I believe happened.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm 5 years old. My dad was a very volatile, abusive alcoholic. And so I decided to run away. Well, I decided
Yeah.
to go to the neighbor's house and hang out, is where I was.
Right.
And one day turned to two, turned to three, right? It turned into 7 days. Well, the whole time my mom is in communication with a neighbor, but I don't know that. So
Right.
as a 5 year old, I'm creating my own story
Of
of what
course.
happened.
Yeah.
And that story of they don't love me, don't want me around, turned into me always looking for them not loving me and not wanting me around.
Yeah.
So when they would tease me, they don't love me. They don't see, this was like my pattern for decades
Yeah.
until I finally figured it out around age 51 or so. And it's interesting because running away like that, one of the things I love to really stress for parents is your kids know what's
Yeah.
going on. Like
Hmm.
I knew what was going on, and that's why I didn't want to be there. And
Right.
so I just took action, and maybe it was a drastic action, and my mom's reaction, and it played into me being gone a
Hmm.
week
Hmm.
instead of her saying, you know what, you've been gone an hour, maybe you should come home now. No, it was
Especially if,
7 days.
yeah, especially a 5-year-old. I mean, it's different when you're a teenager. I ran away for the day when I was a teenager, but
Right.
I felt the same way when I'm thinking back. I felt the same way. I'm like, I just want to go away. I felt like I needed to almost send a message, but I was 15. That was different. But this is the thing that I learned too is when my mom found out where I was at a friend's house And I don't even remember if I just decided to go home or if they told me to come home or what. I don't even remember. But we never talked about it. They kind of tucked me into bed to show me they love me and wanted to take care of me. But we didn't talk about it. They didn't ask
Mm,
me, like, what happened or why did you leave or what's going
yeah.
on. I think they probably didn't know how to cope. But it's so interesting to me that they were, your mom or your parents maybe were talking to the neighbor. And of course, if you were a teenager, maybe you would have been listening, to the phone call to see if you could, figure out what was going on. But as a 5-year-old, I can't imagine you weren't doing that. You just were like, it's
Playing
so
Barbies. Like, I was just
right,
like playing Barbies.
exactly. Yeah. And it was probably in a way, even though you felt like, why isn't anybody come to get me? You also had a little bit of peace and a little bit of calm, but I can
Yeah.
imagine it's still turmoil. And I've heard Brene Brown saying, like, don't go looking for places where you don't belong because you will always find them.
Mm,
When people are saying, like, oh, that friend group did something without me, or I don't feel like I have any friends, or I don't feel like anybody likes me. It's like if you go looking for that, you're going to find that. You're going to find places that you do not belong.
yeah.
Um, but you have to make room for the places you do belong. But um, so they never said anything to you when you came home or when they came and got you, right?
I don't remember if they came and got
Okay.
my mom explained later, and
Okay.
in a laughing way, which was when I was probably like 45 or something.
Wow.
Something about, when you ran away and you were gone for a week. Finally I decided to call the neighbor and said, Linda's been gone long enough. You can send her home now. Like, that's how I came home, and that was it. Like, and I say, like, I came home with my head bent down because I
Yeah.
literally walked around like this. I didn't look people in the eyes for decades.
Yeah.
I had so much fear. And I had the fear, like, was riddled within me, that's why decided to break through a fear every single day for a year at age 51. It's
Yeah.
because I had so many fears that were stopping me from really living my life. And,
Hmm.
here's what I found fascinating about this. Like, as I love to, like, retrospectively look back
Yeah.
at, what I've gone through
Hmm.
and this stuff. So as I started kind of thinking about how I let so many fears stop me from living my life. But then I look at my life and I say, I've done a lot of things, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
this counter. And what's interesting about that, what I came to the realization of, is that there are things that we do that are in spite of fear. And then
Okay.
there are things that we do, um, we do because we know we have to do them,
Yeah.
and we're not going to let our fear, stop us and stuff. And so, again, as I look back on my life, I say, I had all these fears. So how did I do all these things? I
Right.
had 49 jobs in 36 years. Okay. So
Okay.
anybody who has 49 jobs in 36 years has had at least 49 interviews, like, that I nailed.
Right.
Right. So many people are scared to interview, but I did that. And so now I was like, well, why did I do that? Well, because I didn't like where I was. And so I wanted to do what I did at 5. I want to run away from that place
Hmm.
and find someplace better. This became a pattern for me, like, always running away from something. But then I'm like looking at it like, no, no, no. I didn't run away from anything. I was looking for something better.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. That really does. Oh, that's a great way to look at it too. So,
Yeah.
how did running away affect like the rest of your life? Maybe even getting into being a teenager. Like, how did that affect you?
It did. For First of all, my house was, I had some friends, like, their house was the Kool-Aid house, like, everybody
Yeah.
went and hung out, and because it was a fun place to be. I
Yeah.
had those friends. I was not that friend.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want anybody to come to my house.
Hmm.
I didn't even introduce my mom to my high school boyfriend for like a year.
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't want my parents, like, I was in band. I played flute from second grade, all the way through 12th grade. And in all those performances that I participated in, I didn't want my parents there.
Yeah.
And when they were there, I never talked to them. I didn't introduce them to anybody. Like, it
Yeah.
really affected the way I lived my life with my family. Like, I was not, I don't know if I was embarrassed of my family or what,
Right.
but there was something there that was an
Hmm.
extremely negative, feeling of them, my
Right.
whole family, you
Yeah.
know, like, my sisters used to tease me all the time. You have a ski slope nose. And I'm like, my nose isn't ski slope. Like, what is
Oh,
ski slope?
nope.
but they would make fun of me. And
yeah.
like I was teased to the point of like, um, you're the milk. Back in the days, we used to have something called a milkman that
Okay.
would
Yep. Yep.
drive a truck around. For those who don't know, that are a little bit
Yes.
younger, this person would drive around this truck and they would actually deliver milk to your house.
Yep.
And my family used to make fun of it because I didn't look like the rest of my family.
Oh, yeah.
And so they'd say, "You're the milkman's daughter." Like they would make fun of me in so many different ways. And it affected me
Right.
wanting to be around them, and so it affected me a lot, in those sorts of ways. But it also made me tougher. Like I had a tougher exterior
Right.
because of it. The interior was still tender, but the exterior was tough.
Well, and it's
And
sad that we have to do that because I
yeah,
totally, you're protecting yourself, and it's a shame because it's like it'd be nice to grow up in a soft world,
yeah,
And even thinking back, I do the same thing. I'm very retrospective. I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? Of course, we have to remember we didn't have a full brain and all the things that we did, but I do think back because I know that the choices I made affected my life and how I was feeling, what I thought about my self-worth and my value. And I wonder too, like, I just have been in toxic situations where you say, like, I don't want to introduce them to whatever, say your family, because they're going to ruin it. They're going to ruin this
right.
fun thing I have, this great boyfriend, or this fun time I'm having playing in the band. I don't know if that's what happened, but that's what came to mind when you were talking about that. So, so
Yeah,
how did this affect, did it affect your relationships and, you know, the choices you made there?
big time. Oh my gosh. They say, I heard this saying later, you marry somebody like your father.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then later I heard this saying, your first marriage is to somebody like your father. Your second marriage is to somebody like your mother. And I'm like,
Oh my
oh
God.
God, I did it on both ends.
Oh
See,
no.
my first marriage was to somebody just like my dad. He was
Okay.
very volatile. He was abusive. He was narcissistic. He would say things to me
Hmm.
and I believed him. So this is like that belief, right? I believed that
Yeah.
I was stupid
Yeah.
because he told me this every single day.
Right.
I believed that I was ignorant. I believed that nobody liked me and that
Mhm.
people were only nice to me because they felt sorry for me.
Mm.
These are the things that he hammered into me.
Right.
And I carried that negative, I dragged it along, year after
Yeah.
year after
Yeah.
year, even into my current marriage, which I've been happily married now for 37 years. I found my mother. He's not like my mother, but he's more like my mother than my father, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I carried that into this marriage, all that baggage
Mhm.
that we carry into each relationship. And so how was I able to chip through that? It wasn't until 51, when I hired that life
Wow.
coach.
Wow.
She she helped me to see who I really am and
Hmm.
to show up in that way. And after working with my life coach and then breaking through those fears, about a year later, my husband came to me and said, I don't like who you're becoming.
Oh my gosh. You're like, it's working.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, it's because again, I've been happily married for 37 years.
Yeah,
We have had our ups and downs. And
of
this was
course.
one of them where he's like, I don't know. I don't like who you're becoming. You're not the person I married.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? The person you married was weak,
Right.
didn't understand who she was, didn't show up as confident. And
Hmm.
so if you don't want to be with me because of who I'm becoming, then we can't be together anymore
Right.
because I am not going to shrink back to what I was. And so he looked at that and he said, okay, well, let me figure this out on for me because he had to figure it
Right.
out for him.
Of
And here we
course.
are still together 10 years after all of that, and
That's amazing. Well, I want to
yeah,
talk about that because, that's where I think I've talked about this so many times with like coaches and stuff. That's where people get stuck. When you're doing the work and you start to change and the people around you start to balk at it and like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work for my life. And I love that he was like, well, let me think about it. How, because I'm sure he felt like, well, does that mean she's going to get rid of me? Or are things going to change? Is nothing going to be the same? Will I even recognize her? I'm sure a million thoughts ran through his head. And this is where the coaches I've talked to, therapists I talked to, this is where people give up This is what really trips people up when they're doing the hard work is you're doing
Yeah.
this work, you feel good, but everyone around you saying like, no, you don't do that. Like that's not who we like.
Yeah.
We like the old person who didn't have boundaries and it was a timid, scared little mouse. That's so
Yeah.
look, listen, everybody, push through, push through because
Yeah, definitely.
that's where the
Because
good stuff is.
yeah, because even if you end up not staying together, it just means that that person isn't, they're not willing
Yeah.
to, they don't need to grow. Like he didn't need to grow with me.
Yeah.
He just need to accept that this is who I
I love it.
am
Right.
and that I'm becoming. I have this saying that I love to say. It's like, I was who I was so I could become who I am.
Oh,
I
wow.
am who I am so I can become who I'm becoming.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
isn't that amazing? Like really think about
Yes.
it. I needed all that crap in my life.
Yes.
I needed all those challenges. I needed all those negative beliefs of myself that I adopted of others in order to get here. And I needed my husband to say something to me.
Yeah.
I needed him to do that because we needed to talk about it. So now it's totally changed our relationship too,
That's
because
amazing.
I said, I am not going back to that.
Yeah.
So you can either stay with me or not. It's your choice. I was going to stay with him anyway,
Right.
but it's your choice. And so what do you choose? And he said, well, let's figure this out. And so here we've been, ambling through,
Yeah.
but now he tells me what he's feeling about things a lot sooner than he used to. And that is big for men, especially because a
Yes.
lot of men don't like to share what they're, and they want to wait till they're like, blowing their top before they
Right.
say something. Like that's a little too late.
Right.
And so it's changed my relationship now. But those past relationships, I went through so many toads before I got to my prince, a lot. Oh,
Yes.
you know what? So I'm going to share with you something
Yeah.
like how I found my husband. Do you want to hear this? How I
Yes,
found my
of
husband?
course.
So I had been in, I don't even know, countless abusive relationships. I don't even know the number, but it's from physical abuse to verbal abuse and everything
Mhm.
in between, right? So I've been through those relationships. And I said, that's it. I'm done. Like I had two babies at the time. They were 2 and 3 years old. And I said, that's it. No more. I'm tired of it. I'm not going to date anymore. I'm going to be a single cat woman,
Yeah.
single lady with the cats, even though I don't have any cats. And so I found, I don't know how, because this was back in the day, like this was 1987. I can
Okay.
remember when it was because I met my husband in 88. Um, I Somebody told me about this book, and it was called How to Be Married, How to Be Married 1 Year from Today, Lovers Shopping.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, well, I'll read it, whatever. I'm not dating anymore anyway, so I'll read it and see what happens.
Yeah.
I read the book. I read the entire book. There was this one portion in the book that changed my entire vision of what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And it said, make a list of the 10 top things you want in your mate. And anytime you meet somebody, you go through that list of 10. And if they don't fit all 10 of them, they're out.
Wow.
Yeah, that list, I carried it everywhere. I carried it everywhere. And so about 6 months after I read the book, I was carrying my list. I was looking at my list. See, it was like a mini vision board.
Yeah.
It was a list. It was a listicle vision board. And so 6 months later, a friend of mine that I worked with her, she called me up. She said, hey, I've got this guy I want you to meet. And I'm like, it's 9:30 at night on a Tuesday. I got to get to sleep. And she goes, no, 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 you have to meet him now. You have to meet him. I said, okay, what's he like? So she
Right.
rattled off all these things and she said, and he's 43 years old. And I said, what'd you say? Now I was 25 and I had
Oh,
two little babies at that time.
okay.
I think, yeah, they were like 3 and 4, right? So like 3 and 4. And I said, what did you say? She said, he's 43 years old. I said, did you say 33 or 43? He's 43, but trust me, he doesn't look like a 43-year-old. He's not an old man. He doesn't act like, like all this
Yeah.
stuff. And I said, okay, I trust you. Go ahead, bring him over.
Right.
So they came over at 9:30 at night on a Tuesday evening. And something happened that was like one of those little clues you listen to or don't, you
Yeah.
choose.
Right.
They came in, sat down. And my daughter, who was 3, woke up and she came out and she crawled into his lap,
What? That's so
not into my
crazy.
lap, not into my friend's lap. Well, no, here, listen, Lynda. Okay, so not into my lap, not into my friend's lap, which she knew them too, crawled into his lap. And I had heard that kids know
Yeah.
when people are genuine and good.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, there might be something here.
Yeah.
So we ended up talking for hours. Later that night, he called me up and they were driving. So they were driving back. So the 3 of them were together. They were driving back to my friend's house. And back in those days, there were no answering machines. So when they left, I called and I let it ring and ring and ring and ring and ring until they finally got home.
Oh my
And
God.
it was like maybe 10 minutes, right? So it's just ringing, ringing. And so it's funny because he says, we pulled up to Selda. Her name is Selda. We pulled up to Selda's house and I heard the phone ring and I said, that's her. She wants me.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny.
And it was me. It was me. So
Oh
anyway,
my
that was the
gosh.
introduction. And then, he took me and my kids out miniature golfing on our first date. And that was big because my other boyfriends, like, they didn't want anything to do with my kids.
Yeah.
So, but this man was like, yeah, let's go miniature golfing. So we can take the kids with us, you know?
That's amazing. So you were
Yeah.
around 25 or 26, something like
I
that.
was 25. Yeah.
Okay. So then, and then you didn't start doing the work or whatever, your big pivotal thing till 51. So what happened like
51.
in all that time? Like, how was that affecting your life? I know you said like some of the fear, like you can push through it. I've had all these jobs, you did a lot of things despite it, but how was that affecting you?
Yeah. A lot because I had, my mindset was a very negative mindset.
Yeah.
I didn't believe in myself. No matter how many nice things he would say about me or to me, I just didn't believe him. I had all that negativity that was just like bombarding my brain constantly,
Yeah.
talking bad about myself and stuff. So it affected that way because if kind of like thinking it from that perspective, is here he had these positive beliefs about me, but I couldn't hear them.
Yeah.
And so he'd say to them sometimes things like, why don't you believe me? Why
Mm.
can't you believe what I'm saying? Things like that. And I didn't know why. I didn't understand. I
Hmm.
just didn't understand actually why he was even saying anything positive about me.
Right.
And so it affected our relationship in that way, but it was more like affected me
Yeah.
more than him. But because I didn't know who I was a people pleaser, like you mentioned kind of earlier,
Yeah.
I was a people pleaser. I was a yes person and always looking at pleasing other people. And sometimes to the detriment of our relationship because,
Yeah.
I was always for this person or that, or my
Right.
jobs. Like I would work anywhere from, 60 to 70 hours a week sometimes. So I wasn't home much.
Yeah.
So it affected it in an adverse way for sure. But that was
Mhm.
more because I didn't know who I was.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I've been
interesting.
there. I've been there. I got to the point where I said, well, I don't understand how people are happy. Like, how do you do that?
They must be
That was
lying.
what did you say?
Mine was like, they must be lying. That's
Well,
not true.
yeah, and I just
That's what
wasn't
my thing was.
well, and I was like, I don't get it. Like, how do you just go through the world happy? You just wake up and you can be happy? Like, I didn't get that at all. And so I kind of started saying, what I say is I got sick of myself. Because I had that whole thing was everything
Mm-hmm.
was negative all the time. Nothing works out for me. Whatever. Everything was terrible. And I remember thinking back, that's how my life was. Everything was terrible and everything was negative because that's what I thought it was supposed to be. It was sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I do believe if you put out gold, you're going to get gold. So I do believe that. And I just kind of got sick of myself and decided to change and figure out. I really was investigating how are people happy? What does that mean? And how are you allowed to be? And this has always been my word is
Ooh.
allowed. Because I think with my family or even with in my relationships, especially with my ex who was a narcissist, People who have been in abuse understand the word allowed. You're not allowed to do certain things. You're not allowed, because they're trying to control you. And he would say, like, well, what are your hopes and dreams? And I would tell him, and he'd say, oh, no, no, you can't do that. That doesn't make sense. You're not good at that. No, people are lying to you that you're good at that. Things like that. So it's like, I had to learn. I had to learn for myself how that was, what it was about. When you
Yeah.
decided to do the work at 51, was there something that was like a catalyst to start
Oh,
that?
big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was, again, 36 years. I worked in the corporate world, 49 jobs. My 49th job was working for a judge in the Court of Appeals, which
Okay.
I'm in California. That is the highest court you can work in California. And I worked for the number two judge in the entire circuit. So that was a big deal to get there. I worked my way up that ladder, in the
Yeah.
legal, I was a legal secretary for 20 years. And I worked there for about 13 or 14 months. And my goal, I should say my vision was that I was going to stick it out at least 3 years, because
Okay.
in that court, in 3 years, you get a pension,
Oh,
which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But
yeah.
I look back, but I couldn't even make it past 13 months. Oh my gosh. It was it was so hard. I called myself like a glorified, what was it? A travel agent, because
Oh,
the judge that I worked for traveled like 250 days a year to
oh,
different countries, and I had to do like every single thing in, visas and
oh
stuff
my
like this.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a big thing. And I didn't want to be a travel agent. That wasn't my thing. Like, I had a brain that I want to use for the legal world. And
Right.
so anyway, one day I was driving to work, and as I had been doing for 36 years, driving traffic every single day, and I just had this tremendous amount of anger that
Mhm.
coursed through my body. And I was like pounding on my steering wheel, and I was like, I hate my life. Like, I hate everything I'm
Wow.
doing. I hate this job. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I here on this planet? What's my purpose? What is the purpose of the whole planet? Why am I here? And I just started going like through
Yeah.
this, like asking these why? I have no value. I have no
Mhm.
reason to be here. I have no purpose. And I
Wow.
truly believed that. And I was like angry, like I was
Yeah.
screaming and crying. And when I got to work, I went on Facebook, which we weren't supposed to, but I went on Facebook, and I saw a post from a woman. It said, I'm a life coach. I took some time off. I'm getting back into it. And I'm looking for 5 women who want to change their lives.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like,
You're
I
like
have no
me,
idea. Right. What is a life coach? I don't know what that means, but I'm in. And so I
but the
raised my hand
words
and I
change, 5 women who want to change their life. You're like,
changed
yeah,
their lives.
whatever. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
whatever
that
that
was
means,
it.
I'm in.
Yeah. And I had no idea that my raising my hand in that very moment was the catalyst to change my entire life, my entire life. Everything is different in my life today, except for my husband and
Yeah.
my family. But every single thing has
Yeah.
shifted for the better. And, I have ups and downs. I have, like we were talking
Of
before we
course.
went live here, like
Mhm.
I'm in a money down right now. And
Yeah.
so that affects me in certain ways. But the difference is that now I don't let it spiral down like I used to
Yeah.
in the past, before I knew how to lift myself out.
Yeah.
I say that I didn't know I was in the dark until I was in the light. I was in the dark for 51 years.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And now life is, I mean, it's got ups and downs, but I see those ups and downs like this is a roller coaster ride.
Right.
Right now I'm in one of those, I'm getting ready to come back up.
Well, and that's the thing is like when we go down, it's so great when you do the work because you go down, but you don't stay down as long as you were. And you
Yeah.
have the tools. I did have something that happened a few months ago. I don't even know when it was, but it knocked me down for a few days. And I was talking to my coach, and I said, yeah, this really knocked me down for this. I felt like it was too many days. I knew what my trigger was. I knew what I should have done and what I did do. And I know why it triggered me. And she's like, yeah, sometimes that happens. And I was like, oh, because I just thought, well, I have the tools in my tool belt, and so everything is perfect. And it's not. Sometimes you go down and that's okay. It didn't knock me down for 4 days as far as like I could still function in the world, but it was on my mind. And I was like, why is this bothering me for this many days?
Yeah.
I thought I was better at it, but it's great when yeah. So I love that roller coaster analogy because you're going to go back up. The roller coaster doesn't end on the down, usually.
Right, right. And sometimes the down's going to be little bit longer. Sometimes you're going to have to pull into the station
Right.
and change passengers, but you're going to
Yes.
stay in that, right? And
Yes.
then you're going to do that little loop-de-loop thing. And sometimes you're going to do it 4 or 5 times instead of just one. Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's so
it really
true.
is. And I think that's part of, that's part of the fun in life, especially when
Mhm.
after we make it through that piece, like, well, I made it through
Yeah.
and everything's fine. Maybe it's not like I want it to be, but
Yeah.
it's fine. And then we just keep going and then things shift and
Yeah.
it's really an amazing journey that we get to be on, here in this
Well, yeah.
planet. Because you think about it, what's interesting to me is like human beings, we are the only thing on this entire planet
Yeah.
that we have choice, freedom of choice. We get
Right.
to make decisions. Animals, it's all based on instinct. That's how they live their
Right.
lives. It's instinctual. Plants and all that other stuff. I don't know what they're living off of, but
Right.
but something. But humans, we get to choose. And so I remember one day my husband said something to me that I got so mad at him for, because I still get mad at him and he
Yeah.
gets mad at me.
Right.
But it's a great relationship because we can talk about it.
Yeah.
He said something, and that was, um, now this with a little bit of context, because I don't want to sound like really like mean or anything.
Right.
It was mean to me at the time, but because I didn't understand the truth behind it. See,
Yeah.
sometimes what we perceive as mean is because we're not hearing the truth.
Hmm.
And so I had put on quite a bit of weight. I'm still heavier than I want to be.
Hmm.
And I'd put on like 60 pounds in about maybe less than 3 years.
Hmm.
And I was thin almost my whole entire life. And so it just kept like building, building, building. And he said this to me. And I'm thinking about it right now. Okay. No, said, because I was complaining about being fat. Okay. He said,
Yeah.
you must want to be fat. And I was like, how dare.
Yeah, exactly.
And it dawned on me. It's like, no, I don't want to be fat. But then why are you not doing the things
Yeah.
that would not make you fat? Like, it's not like, why aren't you doing the things that would make you skinny? No, it's like, but you're doing things that
Yeah.
make people fat. Like,
Right.
you're
Right.
eating too much, you're eating too late, you're not exercising, your
Right.
your your actions don't reflect. See, because these actions are the choices that we're
Yes.
making.
Yeah.
So I might want this, but if I'm not doing this,
Yeah.
why am I expecting this? And
Right.
and it took me about, I don't know, 50 days to get over what he said. It took me a while.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't that long, but it took me a while to admit the truth. And the truth
Right.
is, it's not that I want to be fat, but I'm not doing the actions to make
Yes.
what my wants turn into reality. And so,
No,
oh,
but I mean, I think it's true. Like when I'm talking to women about different things, it's like, but you're not doing, I have people they're always just complaining about certain things. And I'm like, but you're still, it's like it's insanity. You're doing the same things over and over. And then you think there's going to be a different outcome.
yeah,
And yeah, so I can see his delivery may not have been great, but, but I,
it's hardly ever great. His
but I
delivery is
can,
hardly ever great. Okay.
but we
He
know
was,
he's he has well intentions, I guess. Well, when you were
he does.
saying, when the thing that happened for me too was at 55, I got divorced. And that to me was like I had to change my life and say, like, is this what I want? And then also learning as I was doing the work, going, who am I? Who's Laura? I thought it was only 33 years because that's how long I'd been with my ex. And I was like, oh no, Laura's never known who she is, but she's been a chameleon, you know, she's been surviving and people pleasing to make everybody happy, and nobody was happy and Laura was miserable. Like everybody was. So yeah, it was a big change, but it's so great that we have these choices to be able to
Yeah.
say, I need to do something else. And it's not too late. Like if you're listening to this, it's like, it's not too late. And that's why I work with women in midlife to say, like, it's not too late. Like you can change your whole life. People want
Yeah.
to quote unquote run out the clock. I'm like, that's a horrible thing to say, like, what, run out the clock. That's horrible. My gosh,
Yeah.
So
Well,
I love,
I want
yeah,
before we go further, I do
yeah.
want to give a little like accolades toward my husband because he is an amazing guy. And I don't want people to think that he just like spouts stuff like that.
Yes,
But
exactly.
here's the thing. My husband was the fitness director for the Marine Corps
Oh,
for many years. He's 80 years old. He's 18 years older than me. So do the math. I'm
yeah.
62. Right. So he's 80 years old. He looks amazing still
Amazing. Yeah.
because he works on himself every single day.
I love it.
He knows the commitment it takes to get the result that you want, and
Yeah.
he does it. So it's sad for him to see me not do what I
Of
need. He
course. Yeah.
wants me so badly to have what I want, but
Yeah.
he knows I need to do the work. He can't do it for me. And
Yes.
so his heart hurts when my heart hurts.
Oh yeah.
You know,
And that makes
yeah.
it makes so much sense. And it's like it's so great that you can have somebody supporting you like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the delivery was right or not, the heart behind it is like it's great.
Yeah.
So
You know what? I want to, because the
yeah,
delivery. Okay. So here's another thing I discovered about myself. Because when he said that, that's what clicked, right? It
yeah,
first I got mad,
yeah,
and then I looked at the truth, and
yeah.
then I was like, thank you for saying that. I needed that. So what I discovered um during the year I was breaking through a fear every day, I found a mentor. His name is Greg Reed. And Greg is like my husband in that way, that he says like very short sentences
Okay.
that change my life. And
Wow.
so what I realize is that I need that kind of person in my life
Mhm.
that's going to just be straight up front, honest, not worrying about if it's going to hurt my feelings or not, because
Mhm.
I'm going to listen to it, I'm going to get mad, and I'm going to think about it, and then I'm going to shift.
Yeah.
That's who I am. Remember one day Greg said to me, he said, "You think too much." Like it took 4 words for me to be like, "Oh my God, he's so let me snap out," you know, for me to snap out of it and stop thinking too much, because like
Yeah.
all the things I'm doing today, if I spend too much time thinking, I'm not going to have the success I'm having,
Yes,
you know?
exactly. Yeah, I know. Yes, we can talk ourselves out of a lot of things.
Oh, it's
That's
so
for sure.
easy.
So I
So
want to
easy.
talk about we're not super close at the end, but we're getting there. So I wanted you to talk about the breaking through a fear every day and why you decided to do that, and then how it's led you into what you're doing now.
Okay. Yeah. So again, I worked with that life coach. So I worked with her for 5 months. And at the end of the 5 months, which was like November of 2014, so I ended working with her like right around Thanksgiving time. And then in December, I'm by myself. I don't have a life coach. At the end of November, I decided to quit my job, by the way. I
Okay.
was like, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. So I decided like I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to become a millionaire in a year, because that's what I heard.
Right.
You
Of
become
course.
I'm
Yes.
still waiting for that millionaire, but I'm doing the journey, right? It's been over 10 years. And so, anyway, December, I'm by myself, and I noticed something like my growth had slowed down because I wasn't with my life coach.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm a good student. I did all of my homework every single week, with my life coach, and tremendous growth. People were telling me, you're different this week than you were last week. So I know
Mhm.
my growth was fast because I was doing the work. Again, here I was doing the work and I got the results.
Yes, exactly.
Hello, it works. And so at the end of that December, I said, wow, I'm slowing down. Like I'm not having the progress that I was having. And January 1st of 2015, I woke up that morning and I had this realization. I have so many fears that are stopping me from living my life. I'm going to break through one fear every day this year. That
Wow.
was exactly how it happened. And so I decided in that moment, this is what it's going to look like. Every day I'm going to wake up. And the first thing I'm going to do before I get out of bed is I'm going to ask myself one question.
Okay.
And I have to lay in bed until I answer that question. And the question was, what scares me?
Wow.
3 words. That's it.
And
What
whatever
scares
came
me?
to your mind first that day. Okay.
was my commitment was to
Yeah.
break through that fear that day. Like I couldn't add them up, it's like you got to
Yeah.
break through it that day. I
Yeah.
had no idea what kind of fears were going to come up. I didn't have a list. This was
Okay.
very, very unmethodical. Like this was the whole method.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was interesting because some days the fear was instant, like it popped into my head, like I'd
Yeah.
been dreaming about it, waiting for me to wake up and ask the question.
Yeah.
And other days it was 10 or 15 minutes, but I laid there in bed. I didn't get up
Yeah.
until I had that answer. And I broke through all those fears, 365 days in a row, different
Mhm.
fears. But then I realized about 6 months into it that there was a theme of between these fears. And it's like, what is the common theme here? And it was the fear of judgment. So we talk about people pleaser,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
People pleasers, for the most part, I don't want to generalize and say for everybody, but it's
Mhm.
our fear of judgment. If
Yeah.
I say no, what will they think of me?
Yes,
If I,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's interesting because then I had this again, a lot of realizations going on during that year for sure. I was like, well, shoot, if it's just that one fear, I only have one fear to conquer, the
Wow.
fear of judgment. And I did it that year. So that is the biggest fear, for the majority of people on the planet. The fear of judgment is the number one fear. So
Yeah.
if I can conquer that one fear, how will
Hmm.
my life be different? And
Hmm.
so I started looking at it as a fun thing. Like, look at all these fears I get to break through.
Oh,
So so I ended up I don't see it right here. Oh, I wrote this book right here called Do It Because You're Scared. Like,
I love it. Yeah.
let your fear fuel you forward.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you approach fear that way, your life will change for the better for sure, because you're no longer letting it hold you hostage, hold you back. You're
Right.
no longer letting it put baby in the corner, so
That's
to speak.
right. What are some ways, or even if it's just one tip or something, but what is something that you tried for that particular fear? To like, yes, you came up with it, but then like, did you have to go looking for the tools to be like, okay, well, how am I conquering this fear today?
Yeah, it's a I did come up with some tools that helped me. One
Yeah.
of them is I call it my 7 simple steps to break through fear every time. And that so here's the thing. First of all, I want to point out is we hear things like face the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Feel the fear, do it scared. And to me, those are disempowering. Those are not encouraging you to embrace fear as a positive.
Okay.
It's really keeping you in that fear as a negative state. And
Hmm.
that's why I say do it because you're scared. So like,
I
oh,
love
that's
it.
just fear. That's
Yeah.
just fear. I have to do this because I'm scared. Because what I noticed is 99% of the time when I broke through my fears, I was proud of myself. I felt good for doing it. I met
Yeah.
somebody on the other side of that fear that helped me to transform my life. Doors were open that I didn't even know were closed. So I said, if 99% of the time the result is going to be something good, why do we as human beings
Yeah.
allow fear to deprive us of
Wow.
that goodness? See, whether
Amazing.
it's leaving a job, leaving a spouse, changing
Mhm.
careers, doing something different, saying no to somebody, all these different things that we allow ourselves to hold us back. When we
Yeah.
release all that negativity and that fear, then our lives will be better.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share the 7 simple steps because they are
Yeah.
very simple.
Yeah.
I'm just going to share it a quick way. You
Yeah.
can get the full version, of course, in the book. Do it
Oh, yeah. I was
because
going
you're
to say,
scared.
can you still buy that book? Because we will put it in the show
Yes.
notes. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. And you can get a free download of it by going to
Okay.
actiontakerspublishing.com/do it, DOIT. You get a free download of it, and then you can join the 30-day fear busting challenge.
Oh, I love it.
So,
Yeah. We'll put all that in the show notes for everybody.
yeah. So I was like, okay, I got to create some sort of system here, right? I created
Right.
several, but this is the 7 simple steps became really simple. So I'm going to break it down, but going to do it quickly because
Yeah.
we're short on time.
Yeah.
So the reason it's 7 steps is because our brains, what happens when we're experiencing fear is we kind of are short-sighted and we don't see much like that, what's going on, beyond what's right in front of us.
Yeah.
And it's really it's an emotional thing. So what happens is we're in an emotional state, and the 7 simple steps bring us to a logical state.
Mm.
So the reason for doing these steps in the way I have outlined them is so we go from emotion to logic. And when we have logic, we can look at it from a real situation as
Yes.
to like what will really happen.
I love
Because
it.
fear is fear of what's to come. But what if what's to come is good? And you're
Mhm.
letting fear stop you from having that,
Oh my
right?
gosh, that's so
So
good. Yeah.
yeah, so the 7 simple steps, it's a simple question you ask yourself 7 times. And the
Mm.
question goes like this. If let's use an example of a sales call, because a lot
Okay.
of you listening might have businesses and you're so scared to make those sales calls,
Yeah.
okay? And uh, so anyway, you say this question. If I make this sales call right now, will it adversely affect my life 1 year from today?
Interesting. Yeah.
And your answer is going to be no.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that would be no, right? A year from today. So then you just do the same thing. You say, if I make this sales call right now, will it adversely affect my life 6 months from today?
Wow.
So there's some keys here that this phrase has to be said exactly in these words.
Hmm.
And you have to say the whole phrase each time. You have to ask the question each time because you need to logically step down
Yes.
to
Yes.
no, it will not adversely affect my
Right.
life. Adversely is a key word. You can't say affect because, yes, it can affect your life in a good way.
Right.
So
Yes.
you must say adversely. Your answers, you want to be no, 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 all the way down. So you
Right.
go from, 1 year, 6 months, you go 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour, right now. So I think that's the timeline. But you're
Amazing.
asking it each time. And the reason, again, you want to step down like that because you want to move into no, it's not going to affect me. Oh, it's not adversely. And then you're like, okay, well, gosh, if it's not going to adversely affect me
Right.
a week from today, or if it's going to adversely affect me in a week from today, can I make it through the week?
Hmm.
you know and
Yeah.
then you go say, oh, okay, well, I have to go do this because I'm scared because I don't know what's on the other side. That's the fun part.
Yes, yes, exactly. I know some people think that if you have a fear, that means you shouldn't do it. And it's like, no, that's not it at all. Your brain always wants to protect you. Everything is danger to your brain. I mean,
Right, exactly.
even making a phone call. So we just have a few minutes left, but I wanted you to talk about what you're doing now. I don't know if you have a quick story of how you got into
Yeah.
it, but I would love for you to talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm now a book publisher, and I love this work. I call myself the accidental publisher because I was never interested in reading or writing. They were not my thing at all. But when I was breaking through those fears, like I got like a month and a half into it, and this is when I met Greg Reed, who became my mentor.
Yeah.
And Greg was like, "Oh wow, that's cool. You're breaking through a fear every day. We're working on a collaboration book. It's
Oh,
called
okay.
Footsteps of the Fearless. Everybody just writes one chapter,
Oh,
and we have a ghostwriter who will write your chapter for you. You don't even have to write it." And I was like, oh, good. I'm not a writer. So this
right.
is perfect. So I jumped into that book. And then at the end of that year, my mentor, being a good mentor, says, hey, that's cool. You broke through a fear every day this year. That's awesome. Your life has changed, but what are you going to do about it? And I was like, well, what do you mean? You
Right.
need to write a book because people need to read your story. And I was like, I'm not a writer. I can't do that. And he goes, just write the book, just get it out there. So I ended up writing my first book, which is called The Year of Fears. It took me over a year and a half to write it. I ended up meeting a book coach who taught me a framework that I teach our clients now in order
Okay.
to start it and finish it. And I published that book. And then I said, I was in a book. I have my own book. What's my next natural state of progression? I'm going to follow in my mentor's footsteps, and I'm going to write a collaboration book. I'm going to bring people together to
Yes.
share their story.
Yeah.
So I came up with the title 13. It's called Momentum 13 lessons from action takers who changed the world. And I reached to some people that I met from my mentor, the founder of UGG Boots, the inventor of the credit card magnetic strip, and the creator of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I met them all through my mentor. And I
Amazing.
was like, I'm thinking of writing a book. Will you guys be in it? And they all said yes. And I
Wow.
was like, oh crap, now I have to do it because now I was committed to them,
Yes.
you know?
Uh-oh.
Making a commitment to myself doesn't work as well
Yeah,
as me making a commitment to others. So that was the start of it.
that's
And
amazing. We were frozen for a
there you go.
second, but
Yeah,
hold on one second.
that was the start of it. I hopefully you guys caught that.
Yeah, we did, but
Okay.
we're frozen for a second. So, hold on, we're gonna cut this part out. So just start from that was the start of that.
That was the start of it. Just bring those people together. I made the commitment to them, which turned into being a commitment to myself as well. And then after that book came out, it hit number one international bestseller in 8 hours, and I was like, oh my god, that was so much fun. Let's do it again.
Wow.
So I did it
So,
again with two more books. They both hit number one international bestseller in under 5 hours. So I was like, I'm getting better at this.
right.
And like that day that they hit the those two books hit that number one, I was like, okay, I've been running a women's mastermind for 6.5 years,
Yeah.
but I made a decision. See, here's the thing. I think it's important for us. When you make a decision, like you incise something, you cut, right?
Mhm.
And so my decision was to become a book publisher. In that
Mhm.
moment, I said, I am a book publisher. And
Yes.
I called all my clients in my mastermind and I said, Monday's our last day. I'm now a book publisher.
Oh my gosh.
And I stopped the mastermind just like that because I knew that I needed to sever in order to move
Yes.
forward.
Yeah.
And that was doing what was best for me, because when I show up as what's best for me, I show up what's best for everybody.
I
And
love that.
yeah, it was. So anyway, I became a book publisher and now we've published, I think we're on number 60, number one international best-selling book that we just launched this previous week.
Yeah.
So, we're going, and now I'm publishing celebrities books as well. So it's been a
Wow.
journey. Yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh,
much fun.
that's so cool. That's so exciting. Man, what a change. It's been wow, what a ride. Right?
Yeah.
What a ride. That's amazing, Lynda. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Oh my gosh, that was so
Thank
good.
you. Thanks for
And
having me. That's where I'm at.
that's right, exactly. That's why I named it that. And so if you guys are listening and, please connect with Lynda. We'll have all her information in the show notes. And I'm in a collaborative book with Lynda right now. We're finishing it up. And so, yeah, so she's the real deal. And yeah, I'm excited to have the book come out and all that stuff. I always send people to you. I don't know if they follow up, but I always try and send people your
Thank you.
way. So but if you guys, will reach out to Lynda and check out everything about her. We'll have all her information in the show notes. Thank you so much, Lynda, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me and give me an opportunity to share my story. I always hope that whenever I share that there's one
Yeah.
person listening who hears it and says, I can do that. So
Yeah.
go out there, do it because you're scared.
I love it. I love that so much. So today I had the honor of interviewing Lynda Sunshine West. Yes, that's her real name. She's going to tell us about that. Okay, actually cut that part out. I'm going to restart. So today I have the honor of interviewing Lynda Sunshine West, and she's going to tell us about how she got the name Sunshine. And it's such a great interview because when Lynda was 5, she ran away from home, and she talks about how that story, how that affected all of her life and what she's doing now to help women tell their story. And I think actually men as well. It's possible men as well. But I've worked with Lynda on her helping me tell my story in a collaborative book. And all right, cut that part out. I've worked with Lynda on her helping me tell my story. And she just talks about how she overcame one fear a day for a year and why she decided to do that, and how her running away story, how all of that really affected her entire life, what she's doing now. And listen, she's such an inspirational speaker. You guys are going to love her entire story. I didn't have to drag anything out of her. She has such amazing stories to tell, and she's an inspiration to how if you want life to be different, to be better, how you can do that starting today. So I hope you'll enjoy her story.